Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. Dave, we just finished off the SEMO Conference and Bloomfield Christmas tournament's already seated.
Yeah, it's it's an exciting time for high school basketball around the area. We had a heck of a tournament last week, a lot of good games, and we're going to have a lot more coming up here in a couple of weeks at Bloomfield Christmas tournament after seeing how the seeds came out today.
So let's go ahead and talk about the SEMO Conference, because I think overall it was a very good test for a lot of these teams. And like we said in the last show, it was a good showcase for a lot of parity between some of these lower seeded teams. But obviously the Sikeston Bulldogs are exactly who we thought they were. They're probably one of the best teams in the area. Yeah, where's
Dennis Green right now? They are who we thought they were. Sikeston's good. They're very talented. They're very deep. They go 9-10 deep on that bench, and they bring guys off the bench that would start for most teams in the area. Markel Murray coming off the bench, he'd probably be the best team on every other team in the area, and he comes off the bench right now for Sikeston. So yeah, they're loaded, and they put on a show this week, especially in the championship game against Cape Central in that second half. They just put on a show and just showed how good they can be.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that you have to take note of is that what we kind of saw from their game against Notre Dame the night prior is that, PJ Farmer was not that loud that night, but everybody kind of picked up like a very consistent double-digit point total. And then against Cape Central, I think PJ Farmer had one of his best games of just, I don't have the stats on me right now, but I'm going to say he had over 27 points.
I think he had 25. He had 25, yeah. And PJ Farmer is one of those guys that he doesn't have to score to impact the game. And he did a lot of things against Notre Dame to really, he rebounded well, but he sees the floor so well. He can pass to the open man. And if you pay too much attention to him, he's going to make you pay. And he just does so many good things. Just such a winner. And in the big games like that Cape Central game, he's going to come to play, and he showed that. And I think they just showed through the whole tournament how deep they are. They had guys, multiple guys in double figures. They had, one game you had Trace Sadler, dunk after dunk. Then the next game you've got a bunch of outside shooting. It's just, you can't just key on one thing. You've got to key on the entire thing, and they defend so well too. It's just they're just a very, very good basketball team.
Yeah, and it's hard to call any of them an unsung hero, but you got to talk about McCray and the year he's having already. He was kind of not really well known last year, but I feel like I'm hearing his name all the time now.
Yeah, I was saying on the broadcast, McCray and Artis, both of those guys just go under the radar. Nobody really talks about them, but McCray is scoring just as much as anybody else on the team this year. He's already led them in scoring a couple times, and Artis, he does the little things. He guards well, gets turnovers, makes good passes, and he can hit the outside shot when he's open. He's a very, very good player as well. So they just have so many good players. Then you bring Kobe Thomas off the bench as a junior, and he's been playing since a freshman, and he's a very, very good player. Makes things happen, hits some shots. He's just, they are just top to bottom. They are a very, very good basketball team right now.
So talking about just kind of expectations of what we've been seeing. We talked to Greg Hollifield about it, and that I don't want to say he's completely satisfied with where the team's at right now, but he says we're going to keep rolling, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, move in pieces where we need to. Gave the coach's answer. At the same time, what do you think about the teams that are younger, kind of rebuilding themselves? What do you think they're going to be like in the next couple of years, and what is Sikeston going to have to deal with?
Yeah, you look at the rest of this tournament, with maybe the exception of Notre Dame, who's pretty much senior loaded. Everybody else is young. Every single team is playing a lot of sophomores, some freshmen, and that just bodes well for this tournament. In the next few years, there are some really good freshmen in this tournament. Ernst from Jackson, he just showed how good he can be. 6'7". If he keeps continuing to grow with the skill set that he already has, he's going to be a heck of a player. Jaden Williams, a freshman for the New Matter County Central. He had a couple of good games. He also showed that he's a freshman a little bit with some turnovers, but he's got, the future's bright for him, and a bunch of other freshmen there for New Matter as well. Charleston has some good young players. Kennett it. Poplar Bluff, Sammy Durden, he put on a show in the third place game, consolation game on Friday night. I mean, that was the best game he played by far, and he just put the team on his back. I mean, there's just so many good, young, talented players in this SEMO Conference. Man, you just look a year or two from now, this tournament is going to be loaded again. And I mean, just going to be loaded with very good talent and very even teams.
Yeah, I even look at, with that Sikeston Cape Central matchup, Cape Central was not a bad team. They played the entire game. And it's just Sikeston is so dominant that their best efforts were just kind of nullified. But you could see it that they put in their best effort. They made points where they needed to. And coming into the third too, they were 10 points behind?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of said on the broadcast, look, these first 3 minutes are going to be big. And, Cape did a great job. They cut it to 10, and then Coach Hollifield called a timeout, and the next thing you know, it's 22 points in just like a minute and a half. I mean, and that's what Sikeston does. They feed off the crowd. They feed off these little spurts. They'll force some turnovers, get some easy baskets in, and it just kind of gets things rolling. And I think a big thing for Cape Central is they had their guards get in foul trouble. That really hurt. They had to kind of do it with Edwards had to come out of the post, play a guard. And I think it was a mistake, too, to try to run with Sikeston. I think I was kind of surprised about that because typically, I think Dexter showed in the first game of the tournament how, I think the formula kind of beat or to frustrate Sikeston is to kind of spread them out, slow it down. And, I thought Cape might come out and do that because they had done that so well in the game before. But no, they kind of came out and ran with them. And in the second half, they just showed that, Sikeston showed you can't, they just couldn't run with them. So, but yeah, you're right. Cape Central's got some good young players as well. And I really like the Sims kid, the guard, to go along with Goliath. They're both sophomores. And I think they're going to be good players in the future, too.
What do you think Sikeston's outlook for the rest of the season is looking like? Because I know, especially when we get into postseason, that's where it kind of becomes a little dicey for them. But expectations, compare this team from this year to last year's.
Well, I think they have the same expectations. I think they want to win a district title. I think they kind of expect to win a district title. And then you see where things fall. Class 5 is really tough. There's a lot of good teams in that Class 5 District 2 who they would be playing. You still got Vianney, who's still loaded. You've got St. Mary's, who has maybe one of the best players in the state. You've got Webster Groves, who has two very, very good players. And they're going to be, either one of those three teams will probably come out of that district. And that will be just a tough out for anybody that comes out of the Sikeston district. Sikeston's district's going to be tough itself because you have Cape Central, and you expect Cape Central to kind of improve and play them a little bit better. Especially if you get them in the district championship game, that'll be the third time they play each other this year. So, you would expect them to play Sikeston a little bit better. And then you have Farmington up there who played Sikeston really close last year. The district is going to be at Farmington, and they have everybody back. So, that's that's going to be a team that I know that Sikeston's kind of looking at too. Like that could be a tough team. I think Poplar Bluff's in the district as well. That's not an easy district, but I think Sikeston fully expects to win that district title. I think if they don't win a district title, I think it's kind of a disappointment. And then after that, you just try to match up as best you can with whoever you play. That you're going to have a tough game, it's hard to win a state title. And so I think they just want to get that opportunity and then just see where things see what happens.
No, I know some of your biggest, I don't want to call them complaints, but detriments to Sikeston right now is their lack of rebounding potential and kind of their size. Do you think any of that's been nullified with this past game against Cape Central?
No. I think Cape out rebounded them, and I think that's something that Sikeston is very aware of, and just rebounding is going to be their Achilles heel, and they have to rebound. But if you force a lot of turnovers and get a lot of layups, you're not having to rebound a whole lot. I think when you play teams as you get further into the playoffs and things, I think that's something that will be a concern. But right now, they're working on it, and I promise you that they're working on rebounding every day in practice. It's just something that, when you're just not so overly big, you say that with a 7-footer, but outside of him, you don't have a lot of size outside of that. But you have a lot of guys that play hard and really get after it. We'll see what happens as they get further down the season. But they play some tough teams. They've got Principia coming up, who's going to be a really tough game for them, and that's what they're trying to do is get themselves tested. So if they do get out of districts, that they have they're tested and ready to go when it comes to playoff time.
So moving on to next year, just to kind of put a pin in the SEMO Conference, what do you think the outlook's going to be for next year?
I think next year that tournament's going to be wide open. Sikeston loses a lot off this year's team. Now they have some good stuff returning. Obviously, if Murray is back, you've got some other good players as well. Took Kobe Thomas. That's a good little core to start with, but you're not going to be quite as deep. They've got a couple players who will. They've got one player who's hurt right now who will probably factor into that next year as well. You would think. Cape Central. They're still going to have Edwards back. They're still going to have Goliath Morris Young. They're still going to have, Sims. They're going to have some good players there. They're going to be a factor. I would think even you look Dexter, Charleston, New Madrid. I think they're all going to be factors. I think next year's tournament might be the most balanced we've ever had in the SEMO Conference tournament, just because there's nobody. A year out we're saying that, but there's just nobody that I think is just going to be loaded in that tournament the way we've seen in the past.
I'm already looking forward to it. Speaking of looking forward to things, the Bloomfield Christmas tournament has now been seeded. Do you have anything that kind of stuck out to you, surprised you, anything like that?
Nothing really surprised me. I think the only surprise, I was talking to you before we went on here that the East Carter and Donovan I had flipped in my predictions. Everything else was exactly as I had figured, and that's only because East Carter and Donovan, they played on Friday night, and Donovan knocked off East Carter in overtime. So obviously those two teams are very even. And, I kind of, before that I had East Carter at 10 and Donovan 12. So, outside of that, I'm not really surprised by any of the seeds, but I think we have some fantastic matchups that could happen in this tournament.
Yeah, and we talked about it on the live show earlier, but I think you said you were looking forward to that Richland-Twin Rivers matchup. Yeah,
that first round matchup, 8-9. Richland's just not playing really well right now. Twin Rivers is, they come in and they're 4-2. They've won some games. It's not an easy task for Twin Rivers. Richland is a very good team, but I would not be shocked to see Twin Rivers win that game. The 8-9 game is always competitive as it is, and Richland just has not found themselves offensively. They've got a week to do it. They've got a game coming up against Dexter on Monday night. We'll see what happens with that. And it wouldn't shock me to see Richland win that game. Wouldn't shock me to see Richland lose that game by 20. It's one of those games where, I don't know what we're going to get from Richland at this point. They have a lot returning from last year. They're very good players returning, and they have a freshman in Cole who's going to be a good player as well. But I just don't know. They're just not meshing right now. If they've kind of figured things out, they could be a team that could really, really kind of make a run in this tournament. But right now, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, for right now, Richland seems like a very lukewarm team, and I feel like that's why they've earned this 8 spot. Yeah. It's just really right down the middle, like what Richland team are going to be playing that day. And, for Twin Rivers, I think they're going down a seed this year. So to kind of be in that situation, like you said, Twin Rivers is starting to get hot, and coming in 4-2 into this seeding meeting, that it could honestly go either way. I've taken Richland to win this game, but honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's one of those games. Again, that 8-9 game is always tough, and you never know who's going to come out of that. I look at some of these other games too. Van Buren, Donovan, that's going to be a tough game. I like Van Buren. I think Van Buren's a very good team. I think they're a team that kind of flies under the radar a little bit. They have some really good players, but at the same time, Donovan keeps playing better. They just beat East Carter in overtime on Friday night, and they're a team that they always play well in this tournament. Very seldom. Last year they went 0-2. That was the first time they went 0-2 in this tournament since 2013, and they've been in this tournament for a very long time. And very seldom do they go 2-out, and I would not expect them to this year. You've got Risco, Bloomfield. Risco in the tournament. Obviously we got to mention it. South Pim and Hayti not in the tournament this year, and they've added Risco and East Carter County. I think those two teams are great additions, especially Risco. Risco's excited to be in this tournament, and you look at that Risco Bloomfield matchup, and then the possible Risco Dexter matchup in the quarterfinals. That's going to draw a huge crowd.
Yeah, I think that's a dream matchup for a lot of people. What I think about East Carter, I feel like they're kind of getting a short end of the stick. I don't know what the situation with the phone calls were like to get them into this tournament, but I feel like there's not as much noise for them coming into this tournament right now, probably because they were already in it, left it in 2009, I believe. So for them, part of me wants to say, okay, play loud, get loud, make people know that you're there and that you've earned your spot. But for Risco playing Dexter, I mean, that's a dream matchup for a lot of people.
Yeah, there will be a lot of talk about that game, I think, because I think they're two different styles. Dexter, I think, will be the villain. There's going to be a lot of people rooting for Risco, being the smallest school in it. There are going to be a lot of people really rooting for Risco hard to beat Dexter, and that ought to be a really, really good game. It wouldn't shock me to see Risco win that game. I'm going to go with Dexter if I just have to, pick now, but fortunately, we're not picking, these games. So, a lot could change this week for Dexter. Dexter has a tough week coming up. They have Risco, and then they have Jackson, and then they have Woodland. Those are three really tough teams for Dexter this week. They could lose all three this week and just be limping into this Bloomfield Christmas tournament. If that happens, I'm going to take Risco all day long. If Dexter plays the way they've started out the season, I think Dexter's a strong team. But East Carter County, they've got Kennett in that first round game with Dyson Watson, who just impressed me at this SEMO Conference tournament. Kennett impressed me at the SEMO Conference tournament. They're well coached. They don't give up. East Carter's got a tough matchup there, but they're very young. There are a lot of juniors, and that's a team that maybe not for this year, but you look at them for next year, they could be a really, really good team in this tournament next year. And
I don't know what the conversations are like for a lot of people, but when I consider where South Pim and Hayti were, we talked about this earlier, where do you think they've fallen the seeds?
Yeah, I think they were, probably two of the top six teams. Honestly, I think South Pim would have been a two or three. I think Hayti would have been, 5 or 6. I think that both of those teams would be teams that would really cause some problems. And it's unfortunate that they're not in the tournament anymore. But you also understand it. And, I think we have two good replacement teams. But I'm super excited for Risco. I know that Coach Blankenship has wanted to get in this tournament for a long time. And this is something they've not been in this tournament since 1959. It's a long, long time to be out of this tournament. And they've wanted to get back in it. And now that they are, there's a lot of excitement in Risco about that. And I think that excitement's just going to feed into this tournament. And I think they're going to be everybody's kind of darling pick of this tournament.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's different, and it's different in a way that like it fills that spot that Bernie kind of did last year. Because when you look at that first round of matchups, it was Dexter Bernie, and for a lot of people that's a really good rivalry game. But I looked at it and I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. But now that Risco's injected into this, there's some excitement there for just like, well, hey, that, like you said, that's the smallest team in the tournament. Everybody kind of loves them right now. How are they going to play against Dexter, who, as good as a basketball team they are, not well liked by the area?
Yeah, and especially in the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, because they've won it so much. They've won it 14 times, been in the finals 19 times. That's a lot. It's only been in 68 years.
They hate us because they ain't us.
Right, exactly. And they're the villains of the tournament. But you know what? Risco is going to be the darlings of the tournament. And sometimes I think we kind of look with our hearts and not our brains. I think Dexter on paper, I think is better. They play tougher teams. Anytime you get a Class 4 against a Class 1, you expect that Class 4 to win most of the time. They're just, they play a schedule that has prepared them for games like that. So outside looking in, on paper you think Dexter, but man, a Risco team could come in. They've got really good players. Sammy Smith, he's going to be one of the best players in this tournament. He can really score. You look if that matchup happens. That's going to be probably one of the marquee matchups of this tournament. But you can't sleep on Bloomfield. Bloomfield's playing a lot better. They're going to try to slow Risco down and really cause them some fits.
No, I mentioned it kind of when we started doing basketball season, is that I mentioned Bloomfield is like, what do you think about him? And it seemed really innocuous at the time, but this is the reason why I brought it up, is because I wasn't expecting them to be the 11th seed. So for them to kind of just be this mystery box of just like, they could make noise, don't sleep on them. I feel like that's evident of how these programs are starting to change too. Yeah,
Coach Sindel does a great job with them and has them playing really well. And they play this style that's really tough for other teams. They kind of slow it down and play good defense. And it frustrates teams. Teams like Risco, they don't. They like to get up and down the floor. They like it to get into a certain pace. And when you slow them down, get them out of their comfort zone, and all of a sudden you look up and you're only up 4, only up 6, and all of a sudden you get a little tight and like, oh man, we really can't mess up here. And all of a sudden you've got a ball game. And that's kind of the way Bloomfield plays. And And Bernie does that a little bit as well, at times. And Bernie, was able to beat Risco earlier this year, shot it very well. You can say one thing, they shot it really well, but Risco's defense allowed them to shoot it well. If you're really getting up into shooters, if you're really causing them problems defensively, you're not going to shoot it at 68%. That's just the way of basketball, and so I'm sure Risco has been working on their defense, and Bernie at the same time they've showed what they can do whenever they get hot, and that Bernie team earned the 4 seed because of that, and we'll see if Bernie can. They got a matchup with Portersville. Portersville's down. I would think Bernie would take care of them, but if they win, they get Kennett or East Carter in that quarterfinal game. That ought to be a heck of a game.
Just kind of looking at this bracket, do you have anything that you would consider a hot take that you're kind of banking on right now?
Not so much. I think my hottest take was I think Richland gets bounced in the first round by the way they're playing now. Again, a week from now I may think different, but with the way they're playing right now, I think Richland gets bounced in the first round, and I think Kennett makes a run to the Final Four. I think Kennett gets in that Final Four. I don't think they can beat Puxico, but I really like Dyson Watson. I think he's a good player. I think Kennett's better than people think. They're tested by playing some of these SEMO Conference teams, and I think that's kind of my hot take is that Kennett might make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, my hot take. Bobby Alford might disagree with me. I think Van Buren might beat East Prairie. My coldest take is that Puxico is absolutely going to make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I think Puxico, right now they look like they kind of got a good path to get to that Final Four and maybe even to that championship game. And I would love to see a Puxico, East Prairie, Puxico, Dexter championship game. I think East Prairie matches up better with Puxico, and East Prairie being in the championship game last year, returning their main players from last year. I think that just kind of fuels their fire. They almost won it last year. I think that my money, I'm not going to bet any money on it, but right now my initial take, just looking at this bracket, is East Prairie wins this tournament over Puxico. That's kind of what I think right now, but it wouldn't shock me to see a Dexter in the championship game. It wouldn't shock me to see Puxico just roll through this thing.
Do you think people are starting to turn on Puxico just a little bit?
I don't think so. I think everybody thinks Puxico is a good team. You're always look for these good teams. You're always nitpicking, and so they didn't beat Neelyville by enough, or this or that. But the fact is they won that game. You're not going to play your best every night. There's nothing I've seen from Puxico yet to make me think anything less of them. I think they're a very, very good team, and it's just tough to win a 16-team tournament. You're playing 4 games in 5 nights. A lot of it comes to just attrition, and they're fortunate they get Gideon that first game. These better seeds 1, 2, 3, and 4. You don't expect to play your starters maybe the full game to start the tournament, and that really helps you save your legs for later on. So I think that's why the top teams typically win these tournaments, because they can save their legs a little bit, because it's hard to play 4 tough games in 5 nights.
Do you think this seeding is kind of a little preemptive, considering kind of the week that some of these teams are going to be having next week?
No, I understand it, because you've got to get buses ready. You've got to get your travel and everything ready. You got to kind of know when you're going to play. At the same time, you would love to seed it the day before the tournament, so you have everything everything in line. But no, I think it's fine. We said the same thing for the SEMO Conference tournament, and there was one upset in that tournament. Kennett beat Charleston. That was the only upset we had in that tournament. These coaches know what they're doing. They have a pretty good idea of these teams. They see them in the summer. They see them, in the season whenever they're scouting other teams as well. So I think these teams, coaches usually get it right. We were talking, in our broadcast, the number 1 seed won it 38 times. I think the number 2 seeds won it like 16 times. That's the majority of the time the 1 and 2 seed wins it. Seed lower than 6 has never won this tournament. So usually the coaches get it right.
Yeah, so let's talk about this tournament in general, because you really enjoy this tournament.
I love this tournament. I've been going to this tournament since '84. I don't think I've missed a year. I think I've been to some games. I may not go to all of them, but I've been to a night of this tournament every year since '84. It's just my favorite time of year, favorite tournament of the year. I like it more than even SEMO Conference, even because usually you have great games. You see a lot of different teams. Once you go a lot, you start seeing people that you only see them that time of year.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And you always have, you never know who's going to win. You don't have the same team winning every year. Dexter's won it 14 times. Kennett's won it 9, but you have a lot of other teams. Malden has won the tournament. You had Holcomb win it, a couple years ago. Portersville's won some tournaments. Bernie's won some tournaments. You have a lot of different teams, all always competing for the championship of this tournament. You go to Cape, it's usually the top 4 seeds, and it's always the same 4 teams: Notre Dame, Jackson, Cape, and Charleston. Very seldom do you have another team get in there, and usually those first round games are 120 to 20. I mean, they're just disgusting games, and finally maybe the third night you start having some good competitive games. But in the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, you have competitive games on night 1, night 2, night 3. I mean, every night of the tournament, you're having several competitive games, if not all competitive games. It's just so much fun, and it's just been around, and the atmosphere is second to none. I mean, that Bloomfield gym is a perfect place to hold the tournament. When that place is full and it's really rocking on championship night, there's just not a better place to watch a basketball game.
Yeah, to your point, it starts to become a yearly game of the usual suspects for me. Is like, okay, another team's coming in. Who's like 5 people that I can pick out from the crowd that like I've seen year after year after year. So it's very interesting. And yeah, if you've never been to Bloomfield during the tournament, try and make the trip out, because it is well worth the billing just for the atmosphere alone. I mean, it is shoulder to shoulder. It is people cheering for their home team, people cheering against, teams that like they're not even involved with. And so just to have that kind of atmosphere, it's very competitive. It's just very fun. Yeah, you can bet if Dexter's playing against anybody, the other team, everybody who's there for other games in that tournament stick around and root against Dexter. With the exception of a couple of years there when Kennett was kind of running the tournament. And then all of a sudden Dexter was in the championship game, and all of a sudden everything turned and everybody's rooting for Dexter. But that didn't last long, maybe a year or two. But Dexter's the villain. But yeah, it's just so much fun. And like I said, you see people that you see once a year, and that's at the tournament. And it's a great time of year. And like you said, get out there. If you've never been, get out there. If you can't get out there, watch it on A Corp Sports, because they have just fantastic coverage. If you miss the SEMO Conference tournament, I mean, it's like watching ESPN broadcast. And I saw some stuff on social media about that, about what great coverage it was. And you guys put on a great show. And everybody just compliments, the broadcast, and they say it's like ESPN. Well, I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much, but
that's why I'm here. I'm going to pat you on the back.
Well, we appreciate it. It's a labor of love. It's a lot of work, but we consider the sporting events in this area, especially SEMO Conference, Bloomfield Christmas tournament, anything that anybody's really got their mindset on, just being like, we want to bring that kind of atmosphere to the screen as much as we see it in person, just because we know how much it means to people. So we want to put that effort into it.
Yeah, and it's great for the local athletes to be put on that kind of spectacle and everything, just to be broadcast out there to all these other people. I mean, it has to help them. If a coach is looking for a player and he just happens to stumble across A Corp Sports and sees a Cape Central Sikeston game, well, maybe he sees somebody that he wants on his team, and it just makes it so easy to get that content on these players. And a lot of them put stuff out on Huddle, but you can't beat the Christmas and stuff that you're seeing on A Corp Sports with the way they present it. It's just fantastic, and it's getting I hear a lot of good things in the public.
Oh, I mean, if our broadcast ever got somebody the opportunity to go collegiate, I mean, hell yeah, that rules.
Yeah, that's big.
So just to kind of move on really quick to talk about, another tournament that's upcoming, Clarkton Holiday Invitational is coming up, and we're obviously going to be broadcasting that tournament, but we're going to be seeing some of these teams that are in this Bloomfield Christmas tournament there, at least 4 of them, Risco, East Carter, Portageville, and Doniphan. What's kind of your outlook there? What do you think that's going to kind of decide for a lot of teams?
Feel like Risco's going to roll through this thing.
That's the gut reaction.
That's kind of what I think. But then you look at some other games. You got East Carter, Doniphan, possible game in the semifinals. Well, they just played Friday night to overtime, so obviously that would be a heck of a game. Greenville, Portageville, I think that's going to be a good game. I mean, they may not be great teams, but I think they match up well. I think that's a good game. I think this is going to be very similar to the SEMO Conference, where you've got your one team that just kind of looks like the head and shoulders above everybody else. But I think everybody else is kind of in there together. I think you're going to see a lot of good games.
Yeah, no, I think. For me, gut reaction, like you said, Risco's probably going to roll, but I want to see East Carter play Doniphan, and I kind of want to see what Portageville can do in this tournament, even if it's in the consolation bracket. I think that's fine. They need to get some experience under their belt, especially going into the BCT.
Yeah, very young team, not a lot of size. Zay Bogan is a good player, but he's only 5'7", It's tough. It's just tough. And, they're just not what they were last year. Greenville is a lot better than what I think people have thought of. And, I think they're going to be a tough team. And I think they can give Risco a little bit of a game, but I look for them, and I think they could beat either East Carter or Doniphan in a third place game if they, So I think it's going to a lot of parity outside of Risco. I think Risco is a clear favorite. Risco's got to play well, though. I mean, you can't go in there just and sleepwalk through this thing. But I think if Risco plays well, I think they should win this tournament. But again, you're going to have a lot of other good games, leading up to that championship game.
Yeah, I mean. Clarkton, I don't feel like it's a tournament that flies under the radar, but it's definitely one that we're new to. So getting a chance to even cover it and then just kind of see, maybe a potential outlook of what the BCT is going to look like, it's a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, and having it does kind of fly under the radar just because it's between the SEMO Conference tournament and you have the Bloomfield Christmas tournament. You got Christmas coming up. It's just it just falls in one of those kind of weeks that you kind of, somewhat. It's usually a busy week for everybody, and so but still, it's a very, very good tournament. It's been around for a long, long time, and I think Risco. We'll see if Risco is what we think they are this week, like Sikeston was.
So let's talk about small town parity and what we're kind of dealing with right now, because I feel like that's going to be a buzzword we're going to be saying throughout the season at this point. Do you think that's pretty atypical, I would say, for a lot of years? But right now you're seeing a lot of teams, like even if you're looking at seedings, I feel like they match up pretty 1-to-1. Yeah,
a lot of parity in the area this year. And, it happens sometimes, and other times you have your clear teams that are just better than everybody else. But, it's nice to see that parity. Again, we're looking at East Carter Doniphan. That was a surprise. Bell City over Richland, a surprise. A lot of surprises early in the year. We'll see if that kind of holds out or see if it was just an anomaly. But, right now they just see a lot of parity between these teams, especially the small schools. And even in the large schools, a lot of parity. So we'll see how that holds out as the season goes along, but we could have a lot of surprises this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I just can't wait for Christmas time at this point.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. That Bloomfield Christmas tournament is gonna be a blast.
All right, not to cut it off too short, but I would say after the week we've had, we're probably running on fumes. But
absolutely, the voice is about to go. So
we're definitely gonna have more to talk about as the week goes on, and then definitely in the BCT times, we're probably gonna be talking about that a lot more.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll catch you. Probably Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll catch you Wednesday. Thanks for listening.